Well, it looks like it's 12:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. And
Before you do,
yes, are you
let
going
me
to?
resume recording.
Yes.
You're going to hear an announcement. Hold on, please.
This meeting is being recorded.
And Renee, can we do a mic check, please?
Hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect.
All right, floor is yours.
Thank you. It is December 9th, 12:30. Let's call this meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Absolutely. President Harabedian, this is David Bruggeman. I'm going to call the roll. As I call your name, please let us know that you're here. John Harabedian.
Here.
Ruben Osorio.
I'm here.
Thank you. Yongping Chen. Yongping Chen, are you here?
Yes.
Thank you. Francisco Kim.
I'm here.
Thank you. Shudong Li.
I'm here.
Dr. Amy Mateki.
Here.
Great. President Harabedian, I show that we have 6 members present. That constitutes a quorum, and we can proceed.
Great. All members are here, it looks like, and I appreciate that. And welcome everyone, the public, my colleagues, staff, to our board meeting. It's although we're not with each other in person, it's always good to be able to talk to you and meet virtually. I don't have much in terms of remarks. I hope that folks are staying healthy and looking forward to the holidays coming up, and hope everyone remains healthy and careful in these precarious times. The only thing I'll note in my remarks are that we have decided that we are going to pull from discussion tomorrow item number 14, which involves the discussion regarding the disciplinary guidelines. There have been some questions that have come up, and we do want to give the California Department of Justice additional time to look at the proposed guidelines and provide any further feedback that they may have, and probably take this up in the next meeting, depending on the comments. So we will not be discussing item number 14, the disciplinary guidelines, tomorrow. And I just wanted everyone to know, including any public members that were planning on joining the discussion tomorrow. With that, welcome everyone. This will be a 2-day meeting, so we'll be meeting today and tomorrow, same virtual location. With that, I believe we open up for public comment on even the president's remarks. So to the extent that any board members have questions or comments, I'll go to you first. And hearing none, we can open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator. We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the Q&A box that has appeared in your lower right-hand corner and send your comment to all participants. You will be given 3 minutes to speak, and you will receive a 30-second warning. And now let's just take a moment to see if any new comments appear.
Point of clarification for the public, this public comment session is related to the president's opening remarks. Thank you.
Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the Q&A?
Please, thank you. We will now move on to item number 3, review and possible approval of the August 26, 2021 board meeting minutes. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes?
Yeah, I think there may be just a typo. This is Amy Mateki. It's on the 3rd review and the possible approval of the June 24, 25th, the board meeting minutes. I think probably just the typo. It's currently written as March on the page 2nd.
Yep, I see that.
Make it clear on the minutes. So on the page 2nd, and I think on the 3rd, is review and possible approval of the board minutes. Is June 24th and 25th. And also motion member. And then the March 2021 need to be changed to June 24, 25th.
Thank you, Dr. Matecki. That makes sense to me. Staff, any questions on that?
That is clear. Thank you.
Any other edits or changes to the minutes? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve. Oh, John, you already moved, or I can do the second.
No, you can move.
Okay. So I move to approve the June 24, 25th, the board meeting minutes. Actually, it's March, August, I'm sorry, August board minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Cam, and I second.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Matecki. Thank you, Francisco. Why don't we open this up for public comment?
This is the moderator. We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the Q&A box and send your response to all participants. We will call on people in the order received, and you will be given 3 minutes to speak. There will be a 30-second warning. Let us take just a brief moment to see if anyone wants to respond for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments?
I would. Thank you. We could do a roll call vote.
Yes, we can. This is David. Could I please have clarification of who seconded the motion before I take the vote? Was that member Kim?
Yep, Francisco Kim.
Thank you. So this is the motion to approve the August 2021 meeting minutes with the single change to reflect that the minutes approved at the August 2021 meeting were for the June 2021 meeting rather than the March 2021 meeting. So as I call your name, please let us know whether you approve or oppose the motion, or if you abstain. John Harabedian.
I approve.
Ruben Osorio.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Yongting Chen.
Yes, approve.
Thank you. Francisco Kim.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. Shudong Li.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. And Dr. Amy Matecki.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. I show that the motion passes by a vote of 6-0. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item number 4, the executive management report. And I think this is the executive director handling this one. Mr. Bodea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly. For our first sub-item, the budget update, I would like to introduce you to the Budget Office Manager, Renee Milano, who will provide the board with our budget update.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Renee. I'm one of the managers over the budget office, and I oversee Acupuncture. I was just hoping to provide the board just a brief overview of some of the materials we provided based off of our fiscal month 13. These will be based off the actual close of the budget fiscal month 13. They'll be on page 46 through 48, I apologize, 49 of your meeting materials. And I'm not sure if we're going to be providing an image, but I can go ahead and go through with those. And if those who are interested want to pull those materials up, that's what I'll be referring to. In these materials, we have a fund condition statement. In that fund condition statement, you will see we are displaying previous year, which would be 2021 through budget year +2, which is the 2024-25 fiscal year. These will be read basically left to right, top to bottom. And so from here for FM13, we were currently projecting a final beginning balance of $3.7 million in previous year. If you were to go down, you would see that we currently had an FM13 amount of $3 million in revenue being collected. You do see a minor 186,000 transfer, which would provide you a total revenue and resources of about 2.9 million. When you move to page 48 of the materials, you'll see the expenditures for previous year. We had a FM13 closeout of about 3.8 million in program expenditures. This provides us about a fund balance at the end of the year, about 2.7 million. And this also provides us about a month of reserve, about 7.1 months. Just for those who may not be aware, months in reserve is basically the line item that represents how many months the board can retain its current expenditures without collecting any additional revenue. So if our revenue stops, this is how many months we can go ahead and continue with the same expenditure rate. With this in mind, as you can see in the 2024-25, you do see a bit of a negative balance at the end of the fund balance for that fiscal year. Something to keep in mind is that from current year, budget year +1, and budget year +2, all of those expenditures are noted as fully expended. And we do have a history of reverting a portion of those expenditures. So these are fairly conservative. We do not have any immediate concerns, but I just wanted to note that just to keep in mind that we are comfortable with that as long as the current expenditure reversions seem pretty consistent with previous years. On page 49, you have the expenditure projections report, and this is just the report of overall expenditures for the acupuncture board. And so at the top in the orange, you'll see your balance totals, and that'll be the remaining amount based off of what was budgeted and expended. And so this is again based off of FM13. So this is fairly final. Just want to notate that. And so our balance for personnel services, we had about $186,000. And we noted a balance for operations, expenses, and equipment of about $736,000. And so that actually provides an overall total remaining balance of about $922,000. And that would be considered our reversion. And that ended up being close to 20%. And so those were the overall materials that the budget office wanted to provide. And I just wanted to provide that overview. If you have any additional questions, I'm of course available. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Ms. Milano. Members, any questions? Hearing none, I will move forward with the licensing report. If I can ask for Mr. Hurt. Excuse me, let me double check.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. You want me to start? I thought it was agendized for the
You're right.
business
Apologies. I
monetization.
jumped there.
I will pull back.
Thank you. The next item is sub-item B, the staffing update. We are nearly fully staffed. We did have a vacancy at the end of August, beginning of September. Our enforcement coordinator did take a position at another program, and we are wishing her the best. She really helped, Cricket Borges really helped guide us through these last few years as our enforcement coordinator. And we will be seeking to re-advertise this position shortly. We have begun the process, so we'll hopefully have good news in the coming months there. Our half position of special investigator is vacant, and we are closely monitoring our budget to see how our funds coming in will do this year to see what we can do with that position. Any questions from the board on the staffing update? Seeing none, I'll move to the facilities update. I'm happy to announce that the construction has begun on our new office at the main headquarters for the Department of Consumer Affairs, and our tentative move-in date at the moment is January 11th. This is a tentative date, so we will continue to keep folks posted. But once we have the final date confirmed, we will be sending out communications to our licensees and stakeholder lists to announce that. Any questions there? Hearing none, I will move on to sub-item D, which is the business modernization update. And I would like to introduce Mr. Sean O'Connor, Chief of Project Development and Delivery and Administrative Services. Sean.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, board members, CAB leadership, staff, and members of the public. I know I did a mic check earlier, but just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Ben, can you hear me okay?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. As Ben mentioned, my name is Sean O'Connor. I am with the Office of Information Services. I am the Chief of Project Delivery and Administrative Services, but most importantly, for this update, I serve as the Project Director for your program's Business Modernization Project. I'd like to start my update with a brief background of the Business Modernization Initiative, our accomplishments to date, our project budget and schedule, as well as then maintenance and operations, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end that board members may have about our progress. So starting with the background, CAB participated in extensive planning activities with the assistance of DCA, Organizational Improvement Office resources, as well as completed planning activities with the California Department of Technology's project approval lifecycle. This all included extensive market research and a competitive procurement process, in addition to the detailed process mapping and system requirement development. This required a lot of work on the part of CAB staff. I'll mention later as well, but the dedication of the staff and the leadership at CAB and their commitment to this project has been a consistent thread throughout our engagement. So I wanted to mention that. The implementation phase of our project actually began on January 10th of 2020. So January 10th, 2020, I think we could all agree that at that point in time, our world looked a lot different. The way we worked looked a lot different, and the way we conducted ourselves in our personal lives looked a lot different. So roughly 2 months into our project, as the pandemic hit kind of full bore and we had to make some changes, we had to switch from our project functioning as an on-site project with face-to-face engagement to entirely off-site, conducting all of the activities that we normally conduct face-to-face on projects like extensive testing and training. We had to switch from doing it the way that we had previously done it in person to a virtual remote type of experience. CAB is one of the, and I will add that we were able to do that successfully, continue to make a lot of progress on the project. Acupuncture Board is actually one of 4 programs in the implementation phase of their business modernization effort. The board shares costs and resources with the 3 other programs currently implementing a modernized technology platform with the Acupuncture Board. We utilize, and you'll have to forgive me for a little bit of wonky terminology here from the IT side. I promise to keep it to a minimum. We utilize an incremental agile project management process. This is a common methodology used to deliver functionality more quickly to production, as opposed to a traditional waterfall approach where functionality is not delivered until the end of the project. So let me try and put that in a little bit more layman's terms. We're utilizing a methodology that allows us to, instead of waiting until the end to deliver all the functionality, as was accustomed for state IT projects and other sectors in the past, we actually are able to deliver functionality to production earlier throughout the project, get things quicker to market, which is a benefit to our programs, as it allows them to improve services more quickly. I'd like to now move on to our accomplishments to date. So to date, we've implemented 3 major software releases, delivering functionality currently being used by the Acupuncture Board staff, applicants, and licensees. Just to give you very high level of the functionality we've implemented to date, we've implemented online applications for initial applicants, re-examinees, and renewal candidates. We've implemented online applications for wall licenses. We also have the ability for licensees to change their address online. We have a process whereby if an application is determined to be deficient after being reviewed by Acupuncture Board staff, that application and deficiency can be remediated online by the applicant. without engaging in a lengthy kind of snail mail feedback loop. And we also have implemented a visual indication of the application status, whereby an applicant who has an application on file can log in and see exactly where their application status is in the process, how close they are to completing it. So we've implemented all this functionality, and we've had portions of it in place since actually about September of 2020. And we recently ran some numbers for some other reporting we were doing. And as of November 2021, for the Acupuncture Board specifically, the system has processed nearly 2,000 initial applications, and I'm including wall licenses in that count, and nearly 3,500 renewal applications, totaling more than $2.3 million in revenue received in this system. You know, and I just want to mention again, and it won't be the last time probably in my presentation because I feel this strongly about it, that these accomplishments represent a tremendous amount of work on the part of CAB staff. Each of these aspects that I just mentioned required countless hours of staff input and testing and training, and we could not have gotten to where we are today without their support and efforts. I'll transition over now to a budget and schedule update. So looking at it from a project management perspective, one of the challenges that arises in many state IT projects are challenges tied to the budget. Thankfully, that has not been one of the challenges we have on our project. As of the current date, we are projected to come in at or under budget. Our project is projected to end in April, and we've expended somewhere between 70 to 75% of our overall project budget. And with the remaining planned expenditures that we have, we've mapped it out, and it puts us on a trend line to come in under budget. So that's obviously a very positive thing that we were able to deliver. We're on track to deliver the functionality in the project phase for the Acupuncture Board without incurring additional expenditures against the fund balance. All right, so I want to transition over to current activities in our project schedule. So we are currently in what's called our last major product increment or software release. And I'll talk a bit more about what happens after our last software release in a moment. But the focus of this last release is really skewed to the other three programs in the project, as the functionality that Acupuncture Board had identified as critical to what they wanted to accomplish is nearly completely implemented in earlier phases of the project due to legislative deadlines. For example, like the wall licenses had to be implemented, I believe, by January of 2021. So we kind of front loaded many of the Acupuncture Board's functionality of the project. The last remaining, the exception to that really is the CE functionality for the system. And we're working with the leadership of CAB to get that prioritized and actioned and accomplished on or before April, when the project phase ends. And I understand that it's been communicated to me by your strong advocates from your program that CE is obviously a important area of functionality to improve services in. So we are working on getting that scheduled and on the roadmap for the remaining portion of the project. The project schedule was actually recently extended from September. Was extended from an anticipated end date in October to an anticipated end date in early April at this point. But with that project extension, because of savings that we've achieved on the project to date, this extension is not going to require any additional unplanned expenditures. Those unplanned expenditure analyses and roadmaps that I talked about as coming in under budget, that factored in this project extension. So that data remains accurate. So coming to the last part of my presentation here, from a maintenance and operations perspective. So what happens once the quote unquote project phase of this effort is over? So once we hit that project end date, that does not prevent us from continuing to enhance the system and make changes to improve the user experience and implement whatever new laws or regulations or changes, or even business process improvements. As we all know, software products are not static; they are constantly improving. I think we all probably get fairly frequent updates to our smartphones technology and software updates through that. So kind of the same type of deal for us with this software application. Also during, once the project phase is over, we will be engaging in knowledge transfer to state staff so that we can take on the state side, state IT staff, more of the maintenance and operations enhancement and any defect resolution workload and provide that at a more cost-effective rate than relying upon a system integrator as we need to do during a project implementation phase. That project implementation phase reliance on a system integrator transition over to state staff maintenance and operations is kind of a standard roadmap that we've utilized in this department for a lot of other systems successfully. So that's the roadmap we're utilizing for this one. We will also, during the maintenance and operations phase, we will have a lower level of vendor hours available to us for some of the more complex work or to augment staff should we have a spike in the amount of work that we need to complete due to any large regulation changes or legislation changes as well. All right, so closing out with my final comments, just want to thank again Ben and Jay and the CAB leadership and the rest of the staff for their commitment. The only reason I didn't want to name names is because I fear I'm going to leave someone out because so many staff at CAB have played a role in this project. And I look forward to closing out the project period in the coming months and then continuing to work with staff as we improve the system and in turn improve the services to the licensees and the consumers and applicants. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stay on the line and answer any questions from the board members. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Sean. Any questions from our board members?
Not for me. Thank you, Sean. It was very, very helpful.
This is Yongping. I probably cannot raise hand, so can I speak 1 second?
Please.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for Sean's excellent report. I'm very impressed for the budget. Actually, saving only uses 70 to 75%. So I wonder, it's because you're training a lot of operation on site. Does that save money, or mainly which part make the budget? I mean, make the cost is lower than the budget? I just like to know a little more detailed information. Thank you.
Sure. And to clarify, are you asking where are cost savings happening?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for that question. Happy to discuss that. So to date on the project, we've had a couple of areas of cost savings, one of which was the actual software cost and purchase. Through negotiation, we were able to achieve quite a bit of savings on the overall cost annually that we need to pay for the actual software itself. So that is one key area of savings that we had. Another area of savings was we anticipated needing to rely on some additional consultants for data conversion work, as well as to augment our reporting staff that we have internally. And we were actually able to cover that through redirecting state staff resources and not needing to incur to utilize contracts for that. So that saved us as well on costs. Those are really the three key areas that have saved us on costs on this project.
Much for explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, this is Member Kim. So looks like there's some vendors involved, and how many vendors involved in this software and modernization project?
Thank you for the question. We have one main system integrator contract with a company called Inlumon. They have a licensing application and enforcement system that's been implemented in several other states. None as large as the scale of California, because California, as you might guess, is one of the larger states from a licensee volume and actually complexity perspective as well. But they do have a software application that was in place in multiple other states before they began our engagement with us. So that is the main contract that we have, and represents kind of the majority of the work and the main driver of getting the software stood up. We have, I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, I think we have about 4 full-time developers, and then another project manager resource with them that are staffed up right now. We did have more staff in earlier phases of the project, but as I mentioned, we're coming towards kind of the ending phases, and typically what occurs during that phase is an organic kind of with the kind of the larger hump of the work behind us, the necessity to have a high level of staffing with the system integrator kind of diminishes. So we're seeing that kind of lower level at this point, but that's the level of staffing we have with the system integrator right now. We also have one other project manager consultant that works on the project with us, and that individual helps to augment and assist me with a variety of project management related tasks like standardized reporting to the California Department of Technology, cost tracking, schedule tracking, and kind of overall day-to-day coordination as we work on making sure that we're making progress on implementing the functionality.
Thank you for your answer. And I have a quick question, because I've been getting some complaints from the licensees. I guess it's this, this is first year to putting up the wall unit license. They don't like this new wall license design or the quality of it. Is there any way you can improve the quality and design later in the future?
Certainly, there's always opportunities for improvements. Without getting too much into the weeds, I think that the product that you get from the wall license doesn't come directly from the components of the system that we've worked on. I think that might come from printing from a different spot. Jay, I think I saw that you unmuted and you have your hand raised now, so perhaps you can help me out with this one.
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak to Member Kim directly, just because this is a question that we're getting all the time. So historically, the Acupuncture Board, at the time of initial licensing, would issue an engraved wall license that looked kind of like a college diploma with a seal that was static and didn't change. So the new requirement of the wall license had the specific requirement to include the licensee's name, their license number, and then their physical location. And so this is working much more like a license, a facility license in that way, rather than kind of a wall hanging adornment. So the idea with that is this is going to be a renewing license that is always attached to where you're actually physically practicing. And if you need multiple locations, you'll have multiple locations. So it's really more of a compliance and reporting where you're at, rather than like the other one was more of a I don't know. It looked more like a diploma. So it's really a different instrument at this point. So I don't know if that helps you, Francisco, but that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your answer. Yeah.
And if I might add, this is separate from the business modernization process. We are engaged with another vendor. The printing of the wall licenses were handled by employee development department, but we have found a new printer, third-party vendor that we are transitioning to. So we are going through update process there as well. So the look and appearance could be looked at again as we transition, but we should know more in the next few months about that process and what we can do there. We'll keep you posted, Member Kim.
Well, and I have an additional comment too on that one. The quality of those licenses are standardized throughout the DCA. So in working with our DCA business office, that's they said that this is the process that's standard throughout the DCA for this type of wall license. So we can touch base with that. I've already inquired about that, and we've been given very specific perimeters of how it's supposed to look. So anyway, we can update you on that though, Francisco.
I don't have any complaint or any issue, but there are some people saying that they are paying the same license renewal fee as other professions, but they're still getting this paper and all other like the design they don't like those wall license in it. So that's all. So yeah, thank you for your clarification, and I'll relate that answer to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kim. Any other questions from our board members for Mr. O'Connor? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate the update, and your help and leadership in this project has been invaluable, as well as your team's work on this. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the licensing report. Mr. Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Bodea. For the fiscal year 2021-22 licensing quarter one licensing report, to start with our license statistics of active licenses in quarter one, we ended up with 12,172. And I'm just going to break away and give you a few more numbers now, and I'm sorry that they're not written on the page, but it's not going to be a bunch, just to give, it's really more of a concept or perspective. So I just wanted to let you know, in fiscal year, at the end of fiscal year 18-19, there was 12,353. And then in fiscal year 19-20, there was 12,247, which represented a change and a drop of licensure of 106 licensees. And then from the end of fiscal year 19-20 to the end of this quarter one, our total is 12,172, which is a drop of 75 licensees. So basically, there's a slow trend of dropping of our licensing numbers. So we're just keeping our eyes on that in general. For the next statistic, for inactive licensees, we have 2,298 inactive licensees. As of quarter one, there's 1,243 delinquent licensees, 85 canceled licensees. So that's basically our licensing statistics. And I won't give you any more numbers that aren't written on the page, but all those, the inactives have been slightly rising, the delinquents have slightly risen, and the canceled have slightly risen, and during the challenges of the last couple of years. So we'll have to see how that clarifies in time, because it's just been really a different period. So we'll see what really happens when things settle out a bit more. So for our initial AC license applications that were approved, this is the initial applications for licensure. 93 were approved, and there was no denied. The reason for so many of those approved is they go through the whole testing process and are vetted and complete the testing. And so when they're ready for initial licensure, it's just background checks, and so they go really quick. And there's rarely we rarely have denials when they've gotten to that point. For acupuncture license renewals, there was in quarter one, there was 1,253. The total active wall licenses total to date are 1,672. For the quarter one, wall licenses are 718. And the way that the wall license is rolling out, it became a requirement for acupuncturists to obtain a wall license as of 1/1/21, but in their next renewal cycle. So as licensees renew over the next 2 years, they'll be required to purchase a wall license. And so it's sort of a feathering in of that process. So so that just continues. And then for wall license renewals, there was 13. And so some people bought them early, and when they came to renewal, they needed to already get a new wall license because of a change of location or something along that line. And so that's new data. The wall license is new data for this report. And then moving on to the continuing education report for fiscal year 2021-22 for quarter one. For continuing education active providers, there were 477. New CE provider applications in the quarter were 6. There were no applications denied, and then course applications received. These are the courses they're offering for training were 371. and of those 368 were approved, with 3 being denied. And then just again, another little just kind of trending piece I'm gonna leave this. So I'm not going to give any more numbers to confuse you. I'll just say that our continuing education numbers have dropped slightly. I think the last quarter report I gave, it was 491 providers, and at this one we're having 477. Okay, so that's what I was trying to hit on that one. So moving on to acupuncture educational and training programs. These are our school approvals. We have received applications for board approval of curriculum. We received 4 of those applications in Q1. Of those applications, 1 was incomplete, and none were approved. So they're in process too as well. And then for our tutorial program for the fiscal year 2021-22 Q1, we received 7 new applications. There were 4 new program approvals, 2 programs completed. There was 1 program abandoned or terminated, and there's currently 38 programs actively approved. Now, I do know that there is going to be more of those. There's a number of them that have been approved since the end of this quarter. So that number is going up. And one of the things driving that number is that out-of-state applicants that don't have a California approved curriculum often apply for the tutorial program to be able to sit for licensure in California. So that's kind of driving that number up for that reason. Okay, and then moving on to the next item, I'm going to give you the examination statistics for 1/1/2021 through 6/30/2020. And during that period, we had 157 total test takers. Of those, 132 were first-time test takers. The first-time test takers pass rate was 84%. The total test takers, the 157, which would include 25 retakers, the total pass rate was 77% for all programs, including foreign and tutorial programs. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, I would urge everybody to come back and see the OPS, the Office of Office of Professional Exam Services report on the occupation analysis, which is going to happen tomorrow. So we're really excited to see that presentation, and just want to let you know to be there. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that the DCA has a open data portal, which you can just Google DCA open data, and you can find many of these licensing statistics and licensing information at will online on the internet. And that concludes my licensing report. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification, this is for January 1st of this year, 2021, through June 30th of this year as well, 2021. On the following page, you'll note the examination result statistics by language, and this is for the 2019 latter half of the year. And we have pass rates for the individuals taking the exam in Chinese at 75%, for those taking the exam in English at 72%, and those taking the exam in Korean at 71%. And we'll be going through and bringing you more historical language examination results at our future meetings. Any questions from the board members on the licensing report?
This is Member Mateki.
Please.
Thank you. So I just have a suggestion, or maybe this can be done. Just on the report, when we look at the Q1, Q2, 3, 4. So instead of those blank ones, could we have some comparisons? Maybe you bring back the previous quarters. I just thought maybe, that will be easier, maybe save some Mr. Hurd some effort to explain compared to the previous numbers. If that's something, can be illustrated.
Certainly,
I just
we will.
make a little bit of comment on that, but thank you, great work.
Thank you, Member Mateki. We will look at additional ways to provide this information to also try to include historical data for comparisons.
Thank you.
Any other questions from other board members?
Ben, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did someone else have a question?
No. That was me speaking.
Thanks for that, Jay. And Ben, just a quick question on the examination results.
Yeah.
It seems like it's pretty high pass rates, which I was just wondering, is that pretty typical? 70 to 75%, and there weren't that many test takers. Is that also typical?
The reduction in test takers was because of the pandemic. We did see a drop in the number comparatively to where we were at maybe 2 years ago. And the pass rate, it can be anywhere between 65 and I believe NCCOM had 92% at one point. I can't even quote the year, so there can be a wide range, and it changes from year to year based on the scoring criteria. Jay, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I would just summarize that. Typically they're looking for performance somewhere between 65 and 75%, and each item that we're testing gets a pre-testing before it's brought in, so they have an idea of how that's going to perform. But I think some of the other issues are right now people are taking the test when they want to, and very few people are taking the test. So the people that are taking the test right now are ready to take it, because our numbers on test taking are quite a bit lower. So. So again, as things open up and more students are starting, a lot of the students got stuck and didn't get their initial licensing and have been holding back just because it's been just such a challenging time. So we'll see where that goes in the future. We're not getting any worry messages from the Office of Professional Exam Services on these statistics. So they're comfortable with the testing statistics.
And this would be a great question to also bring to our item tomorrow when we review the occupational analysis, since the occupational analysis is used to develop the exam, and our OPES experts would be able to provide a greater detail on that.
Thank you.
Certainly. Any additional questions from members?
I have a question.
Please.
This number 10. Since Mr. Chen is not here, so if I said Chen, everybody knows which Chen. So I just have one question about from the test. You can see the tutorial program, 3 participants and 100% pass the test, right? That's pretty good. For overall, they have 83%. So their pass rate is average or above average. I heard this morning the stakeholder said when the tutorial program, the entry level is high school, while the school education for the student entry level is college 2 years or 3 years. So how can the test or check the real education? I don't know how to measure, how to balance. That's my question. But I have not do detailed research yet. Just a question, I don't know. Can Jay answer my question? Or?
Yeah, I can speak to that. First of all, the training that students get in an approved training program is a different pathway than the training that students get in the tutorial program, as well as the training that people get in foreign training is a different pathway. So, they all have their own regulatory sections and criteria. The other thing is the tutorial program is 3,798 hours. So it's a lot more training in that program in terms of timing and in experience in the program. But as some of the school administrators mentioned before, over the time, the acupuncture education has become more refined, and so on the surface, for sure, it looks like there's a big difference. In terms of the students' abilities to pass the test, it seems like they're hanging in there with the other students as well. So, I think that there is reasons to look at those just because of these different pathways and having them at least agree in some level of rigor or some level of oversight. So does that help you, Yangping?
You mentioned oversight. Yes, maybe I heard the stakeholder suggest to the next committee meetings agenda. So I think it's a good idea. Oversight. I like this word. Thank you, Jay.
I'd like to add to that. So one thing to keep in mind about the tutorial, as our stakeholder Ron Seidman noted, that there is no AA requirement. However, that doesn't mean that the individuals applying for the tutorial don't have an AA. We see people with many degrees actually applying for the tutorial program. So that is correct that there is no regulation requiring a minimum amount of college education. However, the tutorial program does require that at least 550 of the hours in the last 2 of the 5 sections be taken at a university. So there is time spent in a university there as well. It is, I think, greater variation in the tutorial program because you do see a wider range of people applying for it, whether they're foreign trained and needing to complete some education, or they're domestically trained but on an approved program. So we have, again, a wide spectrum of individuals applying for the tutorial. And as Jay mentioned earlier, we are getting the more brave and confident individuals testing in this time period as well. So we may see a higher pass rate because of that as well. But we will definitely, we have noted that the future agenda item is requesting to look at the tutorial program. And I would caution the 2 curriculums, as Jay noted earlier, are different. There is more hours required for the tutorial program. And the training program curriculum requirement would be best to address first, so that then the stakeholders on the board can develop the new tutorial requirements as well on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Padilla. So after your words, I was thinking another question. So the tutorial program, the student, before they go to the licensure test, we don't require them to have master's degree. Is that right?
That is correct. And just as degrees were mentioned earlier, degrees are conferred by an accreditor. And so the board doesn't have the ability to award degrees. Now, there may be an ability to accept only a certain type of degree if we were to put that in regulation of something along that line. So, yeah.
Clarification, Jay. I have no question.
Thank you, Member Chen. Any other questions from the board?
So this is Member Kim. So tutorial program, I heard that some schools out of states, they are requesting tutorial program for their students so that they can sit for the CAB licensing exam.
Jay would have a better insight on that. Jay?
Well, right now, we do not approve any tutorial program outside of California because we have no ability to have any oversight when it's out of state. So anybody in the tutorial program has to have a California licensed acupuncturist with at least 5 years licensure in California and 10 years experience overall and practicing in California to complete the tutorial. Now, they may be able to have prior training and have some of that prior experience accepted into the tutorial program, but yeah, so
it's not happening outside of the state.
Yeah, it doesn't happen outside of the state.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification. Yeah.
Yep. Hearing no further questions, I can move on to the enforcement report. Let me just double check the agenda. Sometimes the materials don't align with that. Yes, enforcement report. Great. On the first page, we have the complaints and convictions and arrests in table 1. And for unprofessional conduct, we received 10 complaints in quarter 1 of this fiscal year, starting in July. One was DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, exclusion notification. Aiding and abetting unlicensed practice had 2. Record-keeping violations were 4. Business premises violations were 1. Misrepresentation as a doctor was 1. And network provider termination due to board discipline was 1. In terms of unlicensed, unregistered complaints or convictions or arrests, there were 5. Criminal charges, 5 from applicants, 5 from licensees. 2 sexual misconduct, 4 fraud, 0 non-jurisdictional, 5 for incompetence or negligence, 1 for unsafe or unsanitary conditions, and 0 for the remaining categories. Any questions from the board on that one? All right, in the second table on investigations, shows you the total amounts of the various categories. 37 total were initiated, 201 are pending or being reviewed, and 41 were able to close in the last quarter. And nothing seems to jump out in terms of the numbers for those investigation numbers. On the next page, we have the enforcement statistics report, where we have the first performance measure, which addresses volume, convictions, and arrests received. Of that, for quarter 1, total complaints received was 27, total convictions and arrests received was 10%, 10, and total received in all was 37. We did see a drop in the complaints coming in compared to where we were at last year. Performance measure number 2, which is intake cycle time, which is the average time to open a complaint during the specified quarter. We were at 6 days year to date. Last year, we were at 4.5 and 6 so far just for this quarter, since we don't have any other quarters. So a slight increase. And part of that has to do with the vacancy and the training of our new folks. So it did slow us a little bit, as well as moving some of our resources around to pivot to doing a number of the new laws that came into effect this year. Performance measure 3, investigative cycle time. Average number of days to complete the process for complaints investigated and not sent to the Attorney General's office for formal discipline. And now this includes intake, investigation, and case outcome or non-Attorney General formal discipline. For quarter 1, all investigations closed were at 41, and the average cycle time for the investigations was 533. The 533 is higher than we would like. Again, the target is 200 days, but sometimes, especially when we have a fewer number of cases, and those fewer cases actually take longer to investigate, it does bring the average up. So we are watching that closely. We do not like that, but we're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can on our end to move it along. The table below that reflects the number of investigations closed in the respective quarters. Again, just quarter 1, 16 were closed within 90 days. 1 was closed within 180 days, between 90 and 180. 1 was closed between half year, 5 within half year and a year. 6 between 1 and 2 years. 2 to 3 years, 5 are closed, and over 3 years, 8 were closed. So you can see that over those 8 cases that took over 3 years, really increased our averages there. The next table shows the average time frame for the total time to process citations that were closed within the respective quarter. For final citations, the number was 2, and for average days to close, that took a long time as well at 1,354. So that was an increase of over 108%. Again, we're watching that closely to see, to ensure that we're doing everything we can to move those forward. Performance measure 4, cycle time discipline, reflects the average number of days to close cases transmitted to the Attorney General's office for formal disciplinary action, including formal discipline and closures without formal discipline, such as withdrawals or dismissals. For quarter 1, we had 2 cases with the AG, and the total cycle time on those 2 cases was, again, was larger than our target of 540 days, for coming in at a total of 1,167. Now that shows that year to date, well, year-to-year change was just a 12% increase. Again, coming back to some of our older cases taking a lot longer to finish. The table below shows where the cases are for the AG initiating 2, 15 are pending with the AG. No statement of issues were filed. 1 accusation was filed. 3 were closed after transmission. 0 revoked, 0 voluntary surrendered. 2 are now on probation from the last quarter, and 0 for denial of licenses, public reprimands, or closed without disciplinary action. And apologies, it looks like there's discrepancy year to date there. No, year to date, 1. Table below, percentage represents the number of cases assigned for discipline that closed in a specific quarter, that being last quarter. And we have under 1 to 2 years, 1 case closed, and then over 3 years, 1 case closed. And then any other legal actions, no PC-23s and no interim suspensions. A lot of numbers there, but any questions from the board members on those figures? And a big thank you to Christine Brothers, who really walked the enforcement unit on how to develop these. Her expertise from when she was the enforcement coordinator really helped us out after Cricket's departure to help produce this data. So thank you, Christine, for your guidance in that. Hearing no other questions. Oh, please.
Yeah, I have it. This is Member Kim. I heard when the Jace was doing a licensure report, there's a slight decrease in number of all the activities. And these numbers also reflects that kind of tendency, like a decrease, right?
Yes, decrease in what's coming in, and then some of the higher numbers you see because of the older cases taking longer, but decrease in the number of complaints coming in and convictions and arrests.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other members? Hearing none, I will move on to the strategic plan update. We are continuing to work on the regulations, including disciplinary guidelines and uniform standards, as well as AB 2190. We are also continuing to, in our education goals, to do our review of the currently approved curriculum. What we've, as you saw this morning, the licensing committee has been taking up the different sections of our curriculum requirements. We covered herbs and exercise therapy today, and there was calls for additional sections in the upcoming meetings. So we are moving forward with that, and the stakeholder meetings will really help in terms of identifying where the industry feels that any changes should be made, and providing that to the board for their consideration. In the outreach effort, we have had a development in reviewing the goal to have social media presence. The ability to have a Facebook account for the board would require that a staff member use their personal account to initiate the board's webpage. And in light of that, I have taken that down. I don't feel that that's a viable option. Should staff change, we would have to assign another individual to provide their personal information to run the page. And so we are looking at the possibility of Twitter to do this, but we are definitely using our mailing lists, both our stakeholder lists and our licensee list. And the licensee list grows every day. More people start to renew or apply for their license online. So ultimately for outreach, I have decided for no Facebook due to the conflict of having to use a personal account. Any questions from the board members on that? All right. And moving on to the Sunset Report update. As you may have noticed, we do not have a Sunset Report for the board to review, and that is because in late August, after our August board meeting, there were amendments introduced to Senate Bill 607, which extended the Acupuncture Board's sunset date 1 year based on the legislature's load of reviewing DCA programs for the last year and the next year as well. So we are being pushed forward 1 year, and our report will be due at the end of next year. Any questions from members there? All right. With no questions from the board, I I ask the moderator to open it up for public comment for any questions on any of the updates provided.
This is the moderator. We are now taking public comments for the executive management reports. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the Q&A box below and send it to all participants. When it is your turn, you will receive a prompt to unmute yourself. You will be given 3 minutes and a 30-second warning when your time is about to expire. Let us take just a brief moment for people to type comment into the comment box if they wish. Seeing no request for comment, would you like to close the option?
Yes, please.
That concludes the executive management reports, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ben, and the rest of the staff. We will move on to item number 5, legislative update.
Good afternoon, board members. This is Christine Brothers here. And I'm just going to jump into, given the fact that our legislative session for 2021 has concluded, we have the 2022 tentative legislative calendar to go over. I'm just going to go over the dates up until about February, because we'll likely meet in early spring and we can go over the other dates as they come up. So the first date is January 1st. That's when the statutes take effect of the bills that were adopted from this year. And then January 3rd, that's when legislature reconvenes. And then the other dates in January that you see here relate to the bills introduced last year and are now 2-year bills. So January 14th is the last day for policy committees to hear and report to fiscal committees on any fiscal bills introduced from last year. January 21st is the last day for any committee to hear and report to the floor bills introduced in that house. And it's also the last day to submit bill requests to the Office of Legislative Counsel. January 31st is the last day for each house to pass bills introduced in that house from last year. So we'll monitor the bills that that have been turned into 2-year bills, and we'll update you at the next board meeting. February 18th is the last day for bills to be introduced, and then we go into the spring dates, which we'll cover the next time we meet. But basically in May is when we get really busy with following policy committee meetings and tracking all of the legislation. So we're going into that busy time where we're tracking legislation, and that's what policy staff will be busy with. So going on to the actual update of the bills that we were tracking for 2021, the next page, we're just going to cover the bills that were actually chaptered into law. Just going to verbally cover those, and then the rest of the bills are bills that remain under consideration in 2022. So at our next meeting, sometime in early spring, we'll have updates on those bills. This report is as of October 11th. That was when we could see where the bills were falling, and so now we're at the end of the legislative session by that point. So the first bill that we're covering is AB 107, and that was chaptered on October 8th, 2021. This is the bill that has to do with temporary licenses to applicants that are married to or in a domestic partnership or other legal union with an active duty member of the armed forces of the U.S. and who are assigned to a duty station in California. It repeals BPC section 115.6 after July 1st, 2023, and enacts new provisions under section 115.6 with a delayed operative date of July 31st, 2023. It also enacts BPC sections 115.8 and 115.9. It requires, if necessary, board to submit to DCA for approval draft regulations necessary to administer the provisions of the bill. It requires DCA to prepare an annual report to the legislature containing specified information relating to the professional licensure of veterans, service members, and their spouses. It also requires boards to publish information pertinent to all licensing options available to military spouses on the homepage of the internet website of the department or board. Just as a recap, the board did take a watch position on this bill. And then I'm going to go over the implementation plan that board staff has come up with. The board or the staff need to develop regulations to identify requirements and satisfactory evidence for the process of applying for temporary licensure under these new provisions and clarify that practice in California will be limited to the scope of practice in California. We also plan to work with Office of Information Services, or OIS, to develop a new temporary license in the board system, including codes, logic related to expiration dates, and new temporary license print. OIS will really take the lead on this because this bill does cover all of the programs under DCA. So it'll be likely that towards the end, closer to it becoming effective in 2023, that's when staff will get more involved on the specifics for our license. And we've also been informed that it's likely going to be a distinct license type. So the prefix for regular licensees is AC. So for the temporary licensees, it'll likely be a different prefix. We also need to add the new laws to the general provision section of the board's laws and regulations booklet. This next bullet, we actually have already addressed and gone over it with legal counsel. There is a provision of the bill that requires boards that currently offer a California law and ethics examination that would have to be required of the applicants of this temporary license. Being that we do not have a specific law and ethics examination, that provision of law does not apply to the board. So the applicants of our temporary license will not be required to take the CALE, the California Acupuncture Licensing Examination, or some other exam that we would have to develop that's not required of us. And that's been sorted out. So we will also need to develop a system of retrieving data within systems for the reporting requirements. And we'll also have to update the board's military resources information webpage to add additional information from the newly enacted laws. So moving on, or are there any questions on that bill? Doesn't look like it. So that's going to be that's the main bill that affects, like I said, all the programs within DCA. So it's going to take a lot of resources probably from OAS to get this in place for all of the programs. And so we all have our eyes on it. AB 361, this is a newer bill that came right towards the end of the legislative session. It was chaptered on September 16th, and it has to do with open meetings. And it is the bill that allowed us to meet virtually here right now in December, and it basically extended the ability of board and committees to meet remotely until January 31st, 2022. And it did that by amending the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act. To implement this, we basically just had to make reference to the new law, Government Code Section 11133, in the board's most recent meeting agenda. And anytime a meeting is held under the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act remotely until January 31st, 2022, I don't think we have any plans to hold any further meetings prior to January 31st. But if we did, we would have to put in the notice reference to this government code section. So it does end January 31st, 2022, and we don't know if there's going to be any further legislation to extend it at this moment, but we'll definitely keep our eye on it and report later on to the board. There was no position taken on this bill. Any questions on this bill? Okay. I will move on to Senate Bill 607. And this was chaptered on September 28th. This requires a board to waive the licensure application fee and the initial or original license fee charged by the board for an applicant who meets the expedited licensing requirements under BPC section 115.5. And those are applicants who are spouses and domestic partners of active duty members of the military stationed in California. Additionally, the amendments set a repeal date of the existing BPC section 115.5 and an operative date of July 1st, 2022 for the new provisions. So again, we have a little bit of time. It doesn't go effective at the first of the year. So we will have a little time for implementation, which I'll go over. It also extends, Ben already spoke to this in regards to the sunset review, extended the operation of the board and the authority to appoint an executive officer to January 1st, 2024, essentially delaying the board sunset review by a year. All programs up for sunset review in 2022 have been delayed through this legislation. So this year will be focused on later on in the year preparing for the sunset review. Staff, for the board implementation plan, staff will be working with OAS to make changes to the board's IT systems to waive the application fee and initial license fee for those licensees affected by PPC section 115.5. The board's examination and license application forms will be updated, and the new requirements of the applications will be updated in regulation. The new law will also need to be added to the board's laws and regulations booklet, which is, we have a PDF of that on our website, and as well as the military resources section of the board's website. With regards to the sunset report, we will continue working on it with a new date of December 2022, and the hearing will be in early 2023. The board did take a watch position on this bill. Any questions on SB 607? Okay. For AB 1273, this was chaptered on October 4th, 2021. This bill didn't have a lot of effect on the board. It amends the Business and Professions Code and Health and Safety Code with respect to so-called earn and learn programs, and it also amended the Labor Code to add the Director of Consumer Affairs and the Public Health Officer to the Interagency Advisory Committee on Apprenticeship. It removes barriers to earn and learn programs, which are a combination of work experience and education to permit a student to earn a wage as they are learning. We don't have any implementation plan. Nothing is required given the fact that our laws and regulations are already in compliance. So we don't have any laws or regulations that prohibit earn and learn programs. So we're in compliance. And the board did take a watch position on that bill. Any questions on that bill? Okay. So the remaining bills that you see on this report do remain under consideration for 2022. And it's those dates in January where things can kind of move around. Either there may be amendments that we'll see, or it could be they could die, or they could be gotten amended and used as other vehicles for other legislation. I will note on page 5, AB 1236, this dealt with the collection of certain demographic data through online renewals and the board having to report aggregate information to the statewide health planning and development. That bill was going to enact Business and Professions Code Section 502. There hasn't been any movement on this bill, but we recently found out last week at the Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Affairs Roundtable, there is another bill that that section was enacted through that bill. But given that we don't have that bill on our agenda, I'm not going to go over it, but I just wanted to point that out, that we are aware of this information. And so this is something else that policy will be addressing through an implementation plan. So do you guys have any other questions?
I don't. Board members, any questions for Christine?
Don't have one.
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's open this up for public comment. Questions?
We have now opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the Q&A box below and send it to all participants. You will be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning before your time expires. Let's now take a moment to see if we have any comments. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to close the option?
Please, thank you. Great. We'll move on to item number 6, and that's the regulatory update. David, I believe this is you.
Yes, it is. But Mr. President, would it be possible for us to take a 10 or a 15-minute break before we proceed with the meeting?
Sure. Why don't we, what would you like? Would you like 15 minutes?
15 minutes sounds good to me, but if we need to go shorter, we certainly could.
15 minutes is the union break. If we could do 15, that would be perfect.
Great, let's do it. This meeting this meeting is on hold for 15 minutes.
We shall return at 2:08. Thank you, everybody.
Are you ready?
Yes, President Harabedian, I am ready, but I would like to first take the roll before I proceed with the regulatory update.
Sure.
So as I call your name, board members, please let me know that you're here. John Harabedian.
Here.
Ruben Osorio. Ruben, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Yongping Chen.
I come back.
Great. Francisco Kim. Member Kim, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you. Shudong Lee.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Dr. Amy Mateki.
Yes, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Mr. President, I show that we still have 6 members present for a quorum, and I'm going to proceed with the regulations update.
Great, let's do it. Thanks.
Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm David Brugman. I'm a policy analyst with the board, and I'm going to briefly update everyone on the status of the board's current regulatory packages. Any regulatory packages that are coming from the legislation that was just passed that Ms. Brothers discussed before the break will include those packages in the next regulatory update. The first package I want to discuss is one that has been approved since the last board meeting. It deals with sections of the the following sections of regulations: 16 California Code of Regulations sections 1399.469.4, .469.5, and .469.6. This is connected to the implementation of AB 2138, which deals with the grounds for denial of an application or revocation or suspension of licensure for a criminal conviction. So these regulations essentially outline what substantially related means and what constitutes rehabilitation for the purposes of denying, suspending, or revoking a license. And because of what the requirements of AB 2138, the board's ability to discipline licensees and to deny applicants based on a criminal conviction or the underlying acts of that conviction have changed. And so they now require a substantial relationship to the qualifications, functions, or duties of the profession, and the board must evaluate evidence of the person's rehabilitation. So that rulemaking package was completed after the December 2020 board meeting. The regulations were filed with the Secretary of State on September 2nd, 2021, and took effect as of that date. So the next package deals with the implementation of standards related to substance abusing licenses and the update of disciplinary guidelines. As President Harabedian mentioned at the beginning, this is an item that is on the agenda for today's meeting, but we will not actually be discussing it tomorrow. We need to give the Department of Justice some time to address particular questions that they have, and we anticipate bringing this package to the board at a subsequent meeting. So I'm just simply going to move along here. Connected to that disciplinary guidelines package was a package related to updating the disclosure of probation status to patients. It's the implementation of SB 1448. So again, that will also be delayed to a subsequent board meeting. The next package deals with further implementation of SB 1246, and it's to align curriculum standards and approval-related regulations with that statute. It affects 16 California Code of Regulations sections 1399.415, .434, .435, .437, .438. I apologize for the typo there. That should be .438 and .439. So these would be additional refinements to regulations to comply with the changes in the board's authority over school curriculum. We no longer approve schools, we approve education and training programs. And this package would refine our regulations to better reflect that reality. The next package deals with the credential evaluation service that addresses 16 California Code of Regulations sections 1399.409, .411, .413, .414, .416, .416.2, .416.3, .416.4, .417, and .419. And again, these regulations address how the board approves credential evaluation services for evaluating the foreign education of applicants for licensure, including amendments that would address the licensing examination, documentation required during the application process, and applications for examination and re-examination. The board reviewed regulatory language at the March 2021 board meeting and approved language changes at that meeting and at the August 2021 board meeting. We're continuing to develop the package, and we anticipate filing at the beginning of 2022. The next package is the retired status license regulations. This would create a new section 16 CCR 1399.419.3. And so it's established as a retired license status and would outline the restrictions of a retired license, as well as how to apply for that license and to apply to be reinstated from having a retired license status. The board is doing this under its authority. It's in section the Business and Professions Code section 464. The package continues to be under development by staff and legal counsel. We hope to be able to file it next year. The next package deals with continuing education requirements, specifically 16 California Code of Regulations sections 1399.483 and .489. Sets requirements for continuing education in law and ethics for licensees, and it helps to clean up the regulation, current existing regulatory language. We approved this language, the board approved this language at the March 2021 board meeting, and we continue to develop that package with our regulatory attorneys. The next package handles standards of practice for telehealth services. This would be for 16 California Code of Regulations, section 1399.452.2, providing specific guidance and requirements for delivering acupuncture services via telehealth. This was prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic and the encouragement by the governor through his executive orders to use telehealth to maximize the abilities of California's healthcare workforce. Board approved the regulatory language at the March 2021 meeting, and the language is currently under review by the regulatory unit. The next package is new to this particular update. This is a cleanup package. It would go through the Section 100 regulatory process, which is for non-substantive changes to regulations. This would be changes to the regulations that would, make for more consistent use of language throughout our regulations, a consistent use of numbering, consistent use of capitalization, and other tweaks that do not affect the nature of the regulations, but would make them easier to read, more consistent to read, and more understandable. So we requested suggested language from the regulatory unit, and we're finalizing that right now. For instance, one of those changes would be to make sure that all instances of board in our regulations would be capitalized. And we are hoping to be able to file this package by the end of this year, if not very early in 2022. And then finally, we have a package for 16 California Code of Regulations, section 1399.451. This is actually an older package concerning hand hygiene requirements. It was initially approved by the board back in February of 2014, but it has not gone through the regulatory process as yet. It would update existing regulations to bring them up to what was then current public health and health industry standards. So the board is, as of October 8, 2018, the board had expressed continued interest in proceeding with these regulations, and we're reviewing the language right now to see if we need to revise that before going back to the board and making sure that we want to proceed with a package, with this particular package. And I know that was a relatively rapid summary, so I'd like to thank you for your time, and President Harabedian ready to take any questions that members and the public might have.
Great, thank you, David. Let's open it up to the board members first. Any questions for David? Seeing none, we'll open it up to the public for any comments or questions.
This is the moderator. We are going to open up for public comment, but first, Neil Miller has been waiting with his hand up and tried to speak as we reconvened. I'm going to give him an opportunity to speak again. Neil, is this about the legislative update or the regulations update? Neil, I'm going to send you one more request to unmute your microphone, and then we're going to move on to the public comments. Oh, my apologies. I saw you unmuted your microphone just as I was clicking to send the request. I accidentally muted you. Please unmute your microphone. Here is a new request to unmute your microphone, Neil.
How about now?
We can hear you. Go ahead, please. Is this regarding the current topic or a previous topic?
No, it was a previous topic. So rather than hold up the meeting, why don't you move along now? And I wrote down my comments, and I can bring them up at the end.
Wonderful.
But I
I'll
still don't
take
have
public comment.
I still don't have a Q&A thing popping up on my screen.
Understood. I will take
This is
public
Fred
comments.
Chan, legal counsel. Neil, if you want, you can still speak, because I think if due to technical difficulties we're unable to speak the last item, you can go ahead and talk right now about that.
Okay. Well, I was pleased. I don't have my agenda now, but it was the disciplinary stuff and enforcement. That the average number of days is, or it's now at 553 days. And I wanted to, when somebody has a complaint against them, I like for the board to be able to act immediately. But at a certain point, I want to know, what is the board's process for letting someone know that a complaint was brought against them and it's been dismissed? I know of some in the system that have contacted me and asked me to ask the board. They've been interviewed, and if it's not being referred to the AG, that these people are living on eggshells, not knowing that the board has done their due diligence, and there's nothing more to refer to the AG, and it will be dismissed. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that on both sides. One, somebody does something wrong, they should be stopped right away, and there should also be some time limit on how long it is for a person to sit on eggshells, knowing that there's some open investigation that hasn't been referred to the AG, and that there is not going to be a referral to the AG. There was a lot of other things I wanted to talk about, but I'll let it go at this point. It was in the past, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Going back to our current topic, regulations updates. Do we have any public comments for regulation updates? Seeing no requests for public comment, shall we close public comment for regulation updates?
Yeah, please. Thank you. And I think that since Neil made his public comment then and he had a question, I think if staff, if we can get him that answer, I think it's a good question. To the extent someone has an investigation against them, what is the communication, and when are they given communication that it closes out, etc.
I can address that, Mr. President.
Sure, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, we usually, the process is that the respondent or the subject of the complaint is reached out to soon after receiving the complaint, after the complaint is opened, so that we can receive their perspective of the situation that happens. So the board is in communication with them from the beginning. And then depending on the route we have to take, if there is a desk investigation, that may not take as long. If there is a division of investigation, then we must await for their investigation to complete. We may need supplementals. The next communication is usually either to receive additional comments based on what has been developed, or to close it out. So we do communicate with the individual once we receive it, the complaint, and then if there is a dismissal, they're communicated that the item has been dismissed. If it goes to a citation, they receive the citation, which they can appeal. If it goes to formal discipline, then they are noticed of the accusation. So if there has been no communication on the matter, it means that there's still investigation happening, or that we're waiting for something else to happen. For example, we'll receive a complaint because an individual has received a conviction or an arrest, and we wait for that criminal trial to finish before we pursue the administrative action. So there's definitely communication happening, but there are processes that may delay the expedient processing of the communication, or at least the speed at which someone who has been the subject of a complaint would rather not have. I can understand that it can take a while, but especially with the pandemic, our investigations have slowed, and respondents are also a little slower to reply. So we hope to continue just moving items forward.
Great, thanks, Ben.
Mhm.
That's helpful. Okay, we'll close out item number 6, and that brings us to item number 7, public comments on items not on the agenda. And well, why don't we do this? Why don't we open it up for public comment, and to the extent the board members have things that they want to say at this time, they can do that too. But let's open it up to the actual public.
We have opened up for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the comment box and send it to all participants. I will be looking for raised hands if you are unable to type comment into the comment box. You will be called on in the order received, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. We have a request for comment from Neil Miller. Hold on just a moment. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. I have sent a request to unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Great. My name is Neil Miller, representing Cal ATMA. And we have received some complaints from our members who are one particular person who is a subject expert for the board on a number of occasions, and they're having a problem with the CE issue. They've been told that they didn't want to have a letter written in, that it should be done through the email, but then you can't put a check with the email. You can't attach a check to the to any request, and not being able to do that. We have a particular case where the board was sent an application for CEs with a check in a timely manner, and that letter was certified and signed for, and apparently the board has lost the application. They have the check, but they've lost the application, and they were in the same envelope. And there's a there's a timeline for these things, and it was all done in a timely manner, and advertising and other things were put into this, and now this particular person, and I know of more than one case, is sitting in limbo, not knowing how to resolve a problem that is the fault of the board and no fault of the consumer, of the acupuncturist who's done their due diligence and followed all of the rules to get this through. I understand eventually we're going to go to a more seamless process, but this is of the immediacy. This is a class that's in January, and now the date is too short. So I know that you can't really make comment on this. It's not on the agenda, but there is a problem. I'll be following up with the board, and we just don't know what to do. How do you correct something if there's a mistake, and to improve on the communication between the board and the consumer, in this case somebody who is a CE provider. And lastly, I would like to wish the new chair, Mr. Harbedian, all the luck in the world. He's sitting in a very big seat. And I'd like to thank the previous chair, Dr. Matecki, for her selfless work and dedication to the board. And as always, Ben and your team at the board are doing a great job. So if I get on here to complain, it's only to make this a better, smoother process. And I do appreciate the work that you and your staff do. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.
All right. Last opportunity for public comments not on the agenda. I see no written requests for comments, and I see no raised hands. Shall we close the option?
Please. Great. Thank you very much. We are now at the conclusion of day one of our meeting, and this brings us to adjournment. It's at 2:30 p.m. Before we sign off, I would just like to remind board members that we do have the annual evaluation for the executive officer tomorrow. So if you could send me your written evaluations, which have been sent to you, that would be helpful. And any questions before we sign off?
This is member Chen. Mr. Halabidian, how do we send you the evaluation? Through email to you?
Yes, email.
Do we have your email?
I believe you do. You can probably, I can give it to you, or Ben can just maybe provide it. It's just my last name, acupuncture@gmail.
Okay.
RBDN acupuncture@gmail.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's the right email to send to you because a lot of people have more than one email.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Thank you. Thank you for
Mr. President, you don't need a motion for that.
Okay,
You can
well then
adjourn on your own authority.
then we will just adjourn. Thanks, Fred. Okay, everyone, we will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members.